Hi, and welcome to Love You, Miss You, Bye. I'm Christy Chanel, your host, and I don't know if I've ever been more excited than I am right now. I have been best friends with Lori Chapin for 45 years. So that may give you an insight of how much she knows about me, which is way too much, honestly. Way too much. So having her on my show is me being extremely vulnerable to the things that she can tell you about me. It's about sharing life experiences. Through my whole journey of healing, she's been with me. It's really kind of cool to get her perspective on what was happening at the time. It actually brought up a few tears, a few laughs, and I guess the overall arching message here is that without friendship, my life in particular, I really don't know where I would be, because she held on with both hands when I blindfolded myself and was going straight towards the edge of the earth. I had her. She was my co-pilot. I just didn't realize it at the time. I hope you enjoy this episode. And even if you don't identify with any of the stories that I've told, maybe it makes you pick up the phone and call your best friend. We spent 3 hours talking about life, and we didn't even get close to halfway done. Thank you for being my cheerleader. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. And thank you for loving me when I didn't love myself. And now, on with the show. The Love You, Miss You, Bye podcast. Let's inspire each other. Are you nervous?
No, I talk for a living. That's what I do.
I know. Nothing's planned. As you know, I'm more the reckless abandon type, and you're more the structured type. We balance each other very well. You're such a good friend. So good that, I was still sleeping, all right, at 9 this morning because I was up till 3. And I open my eyes, I open my phone, and I see a text to a guest that'll be on later. And I'm like, oh my God, okay, I have to respond. I can't just leave it sitting there. And I wasn't prepared because I was just opening my eyes. I'm like, okay, let me sit here and let me at least respond. So she doesn't think like, okay, she doesn't care. So I respond, go make my coffee. And then I start to get nervous. Now I'm like super nervous that I'm good. She's like, yeah, exclamation points, which is really my personality too. But I'm so nervous that my personality cannot possibly come out in this text message. I'm just like, okay, so do I ask the date? Can I just jump for that? Or am I supposed to do some small talk, which I'm terrible at? So I'm not really sure how to respond. So then, of course, I jump off that text and I go to you and I'm like, I am so freaking nervous right now. And it's really not a big deal, but it is.
Well, it's funny because you're the most introverted extrovert I've ever met in my life. You're this unbelievable extrovert, but then when it comes to networking and meeting people and just it's interesting. It's just very interesting to me.
Doesn't balance. And I'm not sure what that's all about. But I didn't even know. I always thought my whole life I was an extrovert.
Yeah.
And as I got older, I realized I don't really like parties. I don't enjoy them. It's actually an energy drainer for me because I'll go to these events and I don't like small talk. And that's my problem.
It's interesting because in the world of, being an attorney, for the most part, one of the things you're responsible for as you're practicing and doing everything else is you're supposed to generate business, right? So you're supposed to find clients and create business. And so you hear a lot of attorneys say the worst part about practicing is the networking, having to be a networker, going to all these different functions, trying to meet potential clients. And I was always like, oh, that's my favorite part. It's like, I love that. I can't get enough of meeting people and talking to people. And,
let's dive into that a little bit. Okay. So I am for a living, for my daytime adult job, I am a credit manager, AR manager. I have a team of 9. What do you do?
Only recently I moved from private law firm life to an in-house position in a biotech company where I am the in-house lawyer for a bunch of different functions within the business. So we do cancer research and development of, different drugs, and basically we partner with, pretty big companies and develop, hopefully some of the solutions to people who are in their last ditch efforts to treat different kinds of very difficult to treat cancers. So my role is I support non-research and development. It's basically everything else, the functions that enable the business to operate, things like human resources and finance and all sorts of other areas of the company. And I am their legal advisor. Love it. Absolutely love it.
Let's do the timeline together. Okay, so I moved to New Jersey when I was 5. My mother had met my stepdad in Galveston, and he was a biology teacher. He is from New Jersey, so they got married, and we all moved to New Jersey. So we were, 5 houses away from each other? You had the pool.
Yep.
So everybody wanted to hang out and go to Lori's pool. You had a little sister. How old was she when you were 6? 3?
3.
Yep. 3? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And she was a dancer, and I loved to dance. And you were in dancing school, I think, at that time as well. Miss Barbara's.
Barbara. Mm-hmm. Barbara's Academy of Dance. So Miss Barbara was fabulous. I mean, she was just, long, beautiful hair, like always in her very beautiful leotards and tights, and always in like wild colors. And then as we, pot-a-bourade and did all of our little dancing, she would stand there with her cigarette smoking.
Oh my gosh.
She smoked while we danced. And our mothers allowed this.
They paid for it, Lori. They didn't just allow it.
They paid for it. Yeah. Spent a lot of money on dance and costumes.
On the YouTube version, I'm going to drop some pictures so people can check out what our attire looked like. I mean, there's some really great outfits over the years.
Yeah. I still have my chorus line outfit. I have that in my closet.
Are you planning to pull it out anytime soon?
No, I don't know what I'm planning on doing with it. We used to have our little neighborhood shows. You must not have been in full day school yet, right? When you first got here, you were in kindergarten. Mm-hmm. So I think Holly was home and I was in school. And so sometimes you would come over looking for me and my mom would be like, well, she's in school.
What's that?
But then we were in brownies together, mm-hmm. and we did all those things that you do as little girls. We did brownies and Girl Scouts. And
your mom was the troop leader.
Crazy things. Yeah. And then we would spend countless hours sitting with the tape recorder and just performing and recording pretend shows and singing. And, for as long as I can remember, Christy, you always loved to perform. And so we were always performing something. We were either making up dances, making up songs, recording on the tape recorder. Then, of course, our summers in Virginia, we were doing tape recorded shows with my aunt and uncle, and
those are fun.
And the recordings on the boardwalks, right? Like at the theme parks, and we would do those superstar recording studio tapes, and we were always singing and dancing, always.
So you bring up the tape recorder. Okay, her room was, and I'm remembering this, as a thinking, your room was always purple, all purple.
Yes.
Purple wasn't my color. Ironically, that's the color of Love You, Miss You, Bye right now. How I landed there, I don't know. I have no idea. But purple was your color, always. Yep. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting in your room and doing those tape recordings. And we would turn the radio station to like an AM radio station and then find like the music, just the instrumental, so that we could write a song to it, but not necessarily write it, but sing a song to it randomly. Yeah. Do you remember any of those?
Yes. Oh, yes. I definitely remember My Horse is Lumpy.
My
Lumpy,
horse
lumpy,
is
lumpy.
lumpy. Yeah, so it's
Yes.
my horse is lumpy, lumpy, lumpy,
Lumpy,
lumpy. I'm not really sure. That was brilliant writing. I mean,
lumpy.
just brilliant, brilliant writing.
And then there
um,
was I love
I love
you, baby.
you, baby. We're
We're
pals, we're
pals,
pals,
we're
we're
pals,
pals,
we're
you
pals,
and me,
you and me, baby.
baby. Yeah. So, but the fact that we remember these songs,
I know. It's crazy.
I can't even remember yesterday, Lori, and I remember the songs when we were 10. But those are some of my favorite memories. And then we always like to go to Colonia Pizza, Chapes and Chaps, which is our last names. Actually, that one
Yeah.
was pretty cool.
So we danced our way through grammar school and into high school. And then you were back and forth and constantly leaving and coming back and breaking my heart and leaving and then coming back. And then there was the whole years. So, we will spare the world on that. That was a
Well,
tough time.
I think it's important to kind of touch on it just a little bit because honestly, him being there, he's a huge part of my story, and you being there, another huge part of my story. They played into this whole scenario of us getting
Mm-hmm.
stronger because you were kind of that voice on my shoulder saying, this may not be a good thing. There's things going on that you don't know about. You weren't the only one telling me these things. I mean, it was a multiple people telling me these things. And of course, when you're young and you're in love and you just think that you don't want to believe it, you really kind of helped me through that situation. And even though you knew and you saw the train coming, you still stayed on the course with me. You didn't
Yeah.
let me you didn't come back and go, I told you, I told you, I told you. You weren't that type of friend. You were, all right, well, now pick up, let's move on to the next thing. So it was a really, really good thing. I think you were there for me when it came to my relationships a lot throughout the years. We went through the high school days. I don't know that we were together all the time because I think we were both with our
Consumed
friend
with our
groups.
boyfriends. Yeah, I mean, I worked and we had boyfriends, and I didn't like him. You're him,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
he didn't care for me because he knew that I knew everything. So we were never going to hang out as couples or do things together as couples. But yeah, I would say that was probably the period when we were just kind of off doing our own thing.
But we kept our friendship throughout this whole thing, even though we were kind of living our own separate lives. And you're older, so you had different people in your life and stuff like that. And I really don't think I was liked so much by the your class. I just don't feel
Well,
in,
I think it was the factor. I mean,
was it?
a lot of people did not care for him. And
Mm-hmm.
then a lot of people knew he was, not being faithful to you. And in fact, one of them was my friends that he was always flirting around with and whatnot, which made it even harder for me to look him in the eye.
Well, I also, because I was with him from my freshman year to my junior year, it really kind of took me out of the social scene
Yeah.
because he was a very jealous, controlling person. Just so you know, I'm going to beep his name out, but I want to
Yeah.
talk about it
Yeah.
because I
Hmm.
feel like it's important
Yeah.
in who I am as well. I didn't really have a social life until my senior year in high school. And it's
Right.
because he didn't want me to talk to anybody if it
Yeah.
wasn't him. And I would talk to just friends, guy friends, and he would give them the death stare and threaten their lives. Like he was a bully.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
of course, I didn't understand all of that at that point. I didn't realize that's a controlling trait that you don't want. And so a lot of people either pitied me or they hated me because they wanted to be with him. It was one or the other. It was
Yeah.
either they wanted my boyfriend and they hated me because of it, because he would make them think that they could have him,
Right.
or it's they felt bad for me. So I
Yeah.
didn't really sit in any kind of, normal lane through that whole thing. So I missed out on a lot of friendships. And
Yeah.
I regret
But
that.
you did have that sort of core group of girls that, you would kind of always run with when there was like high school kind of
Yeah.
stuff to do. But I do think that he was a big factor in us not spending a lot of time together during that
Mhm.
time, other people not really wanting to get involved with you because there was that sort of ick around it.
Yeah.
And people used to say to me, like, I know she's your best friend, but blah, blah, blah. And not about you, about him. And
Hmm.
I would be like, she knows. At some point, I just was like, she knows and she chooses to stay with him. And it was sort of sad for me to like have to tell
Sure.
people that,
I agree. Because
yeah,
you were in a situation where you had to kind of somewhat defend me,
yeah,
and so that puts you in a very weird place because you know me in a different way than what they're seeing. Not only were your friends, some of your acquaintances, sleeping with him or flirting with him or anything like that,
any number
my
of
friends were.
possibilities. Yeah,
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 all of them were a possibility. My friends were.
yeah,
So some of my friends were part of all of that. And
yeah.
of course, I didn't know it at the time. I didn't find out until I moved to Texas and he was there with me.
Mm-hmm.
About a good handful of people I didn't know about until he was actually living with me there.
Yeah.
So when we got back, I was faced. He asked me. He's like, he was going down the wrong path. It was, he knew he was going down the wrong path. And he sat me down. We went to a restaurant. He sat me down and he said, I can move to another state with my aunt, or I can stay here and try to get right here. I'm not going to leave unless you tell me that I should go. Because I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to leave this decision in your hands. And I know that's a big decision for me to make about his life.
Yeah.
And so I looked at him inside. I thought, this is my opportunity to escape.
Yeah.
I saw it at that age. I knew this is it. And I looked at him and I said, you need to go. You need to get your life together and you need to go. When he left,
Yeah.
I was free for the first time. It was life changing for me and for him. He went on to the next person that he ended up with. He ended up marrying and having kids, and he's still with today. So it worked out for him and it worked out for me. The only problem was it was my first time in a relationship. So it was my only thing that I could compare it to. This was love.
Because he was even jealous of us. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like he was jealous of our relationship. So he didn't want you being friends with guys. He didn't want you being friends with me. He didn't want you being friends with anybody. And it was just very dangerous. So I'm glad that it eventually did end.
Well, and
Unfortunately, I think it set the stage though for other things like
it
it.
would. It
Yeah.
would. And that is why, if I was going to tell this story, I'm really glad that it's with you because you were actually in there with me, and it's not just my own perception of how people viewed me. It was reality. Like
Yeah.
it was people were getting beat up
Yeah.
because they talked to me.
Yeah.
It was crazy, crazy. And
Yeah.
to me, I'm like, "Oh, that's because he loves me." Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Oh
Yeah.
my
I think
gosh.
the hardest thing for me in that time or when he was in your life or whatever was when you were living in Texas. We were here and it was our senior year. So he and I lived here and there were all these graduation parties at the end of our senior year, right? Everybody's going off to college. There's all these parties. And we were at a party. I don't know. It was at somebody in my classes who I was good friends with, and we were at a party there, and he was never at the same parties that I was at, like never. So I don't know what he was doing here, but he was there, and he was drunk, and he hit on me, and I was like,
Mm.
"Are you kidding me? You hate me, number one. You hate me.
Hmm.
You're
Oh wait,
dating
but
my best
if he
friend,
had
number
no, but if he had a secret with you, that would be the way to go because then you would turn on me.
And I was just like, you are out of your mind. I mean, I basically was like, you have just crossed the line in a way that you can never uncross. I was just like, she is my best friend. You and I hate each other. Like, just like stop, go away. So
Yeah.
he was a mess. He was just a mess.
He was a mess. And I don't know why that had to be my first experience with love. Looking back, it's like I can I can feel how other that puppy love, that is just clouded and you just think that you can change them. I've been thinking I can change the people in my life, the men, not the women, the men in my life, my whole
For a
life
long time. A
for
long
a
time.
long time. And it started in high school. At 13 is when I started dating him. 13.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and then I learned an important lesson that men cheat. And then I also learned that men, the more they love you, the more they control. I learned that you can't trust anyone that you think you can,
Yep.
because they will, if they see an opportunity, they will stab you in the back. I learned
Except me.
but people, friends who I thought were friends. And then I had to turn around and forgive those friends. There were some people that are diamonds that I met
Yeah.
in high school and middle school that I just
Of course.
cherished so very much. But I'm very lucky that I had you there. I know how frustrating it must have been to be my friend during that time when I just didn't have enough self-love or experience and wisdom to understand what was happening. But all these years later, it's still a little traumatic. I got to
Yeah.
say, it still affects me. I still feel myself like when you told me just now that he hit on you, and I'm sure you've told me before. I'm sure we've had this talk.
Yeah.
But when you told me just now, it felt like you were telling me for
Visceral.
the first time.
Yeah.
Yes,
Visceral. Yep. Mm-hmm.
which is crazy. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
how many years ago was that? And it still affects me like that. I guess it's like when you smell a certain smell and it brings you back, or you hear a certain sound or
Hear
hear
a
a
certain
song.
song. I think
Yeah.
what was the hardest thing for me was not actually those years. It was later, right? So, you know, the next chapter is you go off and leave again. You're always leaving me, but you left and then became a really young mom, right? Had
Mm-hmm.
Austin very, very young
19.
and 19, and I was in college. Those were some difficult years for you after you were on your own with Austin, and I was preparing for my life, right? So getting ready to go to law school, doing all these things, whatever, and knowing that you were struggling, but then to watch you go through it again, to keep watching, you kind of put yourself last, put these people that weren't treating you right first. And now, of course, when you had Austin, you put him first. But, that was hard. It was really hard to watch you go through that and be able to do nothing and not be in the same space to even be like, hey, come over, or I'll come over and see you in Austin. Or, it's just, we were just so far apart.
Yeah.
But I knew you had your mom. I knew that as long as she was there, you'd be okay. And then,
Well, let's touch on that area just a little bit. When I left, I went and visited my dad in Indiana, and it was after high school. So I left, I moved to Indiana, and I ended up getting pregnant. So I was presented with options at that point where I could have the baby or not have the baby. So my mom was 100% on board with whatever I wanted to do. She ended up flying into Indiana. I sat down at a table with my stepmom, my dad, and my mother. And they said, "You need to make a decision on what you're going to do." And at that point, I still didn't know. And my mom's like, "I'm not leaving until you tell me what we're going to do." Is my way of like, oh, if I just don't think about it, nothing will happen. Well, there's a time limit on that.
yeah.
And she said, "You need to make a decision." I was like, "Okay, I'm going to have an abortion." Now, I've already had this talk with my son, Austin. So this is not something that is shocking. He's well aware of the whole thing. I'm very open with my kids. So I flew there, and I guess my mom had set up an appointment for me to go.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
And then we went to the place. It was storming. For some reason, I was the one driving to this appointment. Me.
Hmm.
The one that was about to, have this appointment. I don't know how that happened, but I get into, didn't I hit a car into the parking lot? Like I
I
was
think
pulling in,
so.
it was raining, and then I nipped a car pulling into the spot. Well, of course I did because I was a complete wreck. We go into the place, we're sitting in the lobby, and I go back into the room and the lights go out in the building. The freaking lights go out. So this right here makes me sob. I start to cry. And I go back into the with the doctor and I'm sobbing. And he says, "You clearly aren't sure you want to do this." And he goes, "And I cannot in good conscience do this.
Yeah.
I cannot." And I said, I know that. I know that. And he goes, "I need you to go home." He's looking at his watch. He's like, "You don't have time. So you need to make a decision in the next 24 to 48 hours on what's going to happen next." So I left, you and I and my mom. We went to the Penny Arcade in Clark. I don't think it's that anymore. We went there and we sat down and we were kind of ordering, and there was kind of the elephant in the room. What are you going to do? And that's when I said, I feel like the lights going out in the building was a sign to me. I don't know. I can't explain it, but it felt like a sign. And I said, I'm going to have him or have the baby. I didn't know what it was. I'm going to have the baby. And my mom was like, okay. And Lori's like, okay. And then we just ordered our food and it was another day after that, you know?
I think we cried at some point for sure.
Probably. Yeah. Yeah. I just remember the relief, like the decision has been made. Looking back now, because my mom would pass away in 1999, this would be the only grandchild that she would ever know. And
Yeah.
it really needed to happen, not just because I wanted her to be a grandmother, but I love the fact that I got to see her as one, you
Yeah.
know, that she got to share in that whole experience with me and being there and all of that stuff. So it was obviously Austin was meant to be here to accomplish what he needs to accomplish in the world. And I needed to go through that. But
Yeah.
beyond that, I had two strong women by my side to tell me it's okay. No matter what you choose, we are going to stand. I'm going to cry.
We're going to be here for you. Yep. Absolutely. No matter what you decide.
But I think I'm crying because other people don't necessarily have that support.
Yeah.
And it's
And
not fair.
they make those decisions in a moment of fear or alone or under pressure by somebody who wants to control them, back to the controlling. Yeah, there's not everybody has that.
And I live in a state where um, they've taken that away. They've taken that away.
Yep.
And I just know I was in a good situation and I had people that no matter what I chose were not going to walk away. They were going to stand by me. And there are people that don't have that and they're scared and they
Hmm.
don't have an option and they live here in Texas and it's overwhelming to know
Yeah.
that the generation right now has to fight again and to deal with that.
Yeah.
And I feel incredibly lucky and I'm glad that I'm not ever I don't have to be put in that situation living here right now, but my daughter would have to be put in that situation. She has me and I'm going to
Yeah.
freaking fight for her and take her wherever she needs to go if that should ever be a choice she has to make.
Right.
Um and so yeah, so I mean I just feel incredibly lucky that I had you and I had my mom, and she never and you never looked twice at me for even thinking maybe that could happen. So
Yeah.
as we move through the timeline, after that I obviously became a mom. So you were talking about how I got into another fantastic relationship. I don't think he was controlling like Jay was,
Mm-hmm.
but he was angry. He was an angry
Yeah.
person. And
Yeah.
because he was an angry person, he would take that anger out on me. And I could see signs in the future that could be a lot bigger had I stayed in that situation, taking
Yeah.
my engine apart so I couldn't leave, things like that were happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it just became a very volatile situation. So I ended up moving back to New Jersey because, Lori's like, she keeps coming back and forth. So I ended up moving back to New Jersey with Austin. Where were you at this time? So this would have been, Austin was born in 93, and I would have moved back in 95, probably right around that time frame.
So
So you were
I'm in
still
law school.
mm-hmm.
I'm working full time during the day, going to law school at night with my now husband. Yeah. So we were in very different places. Very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were in hardcore studying
Yeah.
and
I
falling
mean,
in love.
I was basically out of the house from, 7:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. between work and school, and then had to come home, study for the next day, and get up and do it all over again every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a lot of time.
No, no. This is where I don't really have a career at this point. I started working as a server in restaurants, which I'm really, really thankful for because it really teaches you customer service and how to handle people face to face, which I
Yep.
think is really important because if you can stay calm, cool, and collected when you have people saying terrible things to you at times,
Yeah.
you can pretty much handle anything. I came back to New Jersey. I started working at Lone Star Steakhouse and Saloon, which was totally right up my alley because it was country, okay, which is all me,
Yep.
and it was dancing. So I was able to dance in the aisles with kids, line dance, and jump up on the sides, and we would sing a song and get the whole crowd involved. And it was a brand new restaurant, so I was there to open it, and I loved it. I loved everything about working in Bridgewater. It was in Bridgewater, and my mom came, and she was part of that whole thing. I don't know if you ever made it out to Lone Star Steakhouse and Saloon. A couple of
Oh
my
yeah.
friends
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
did. You did come? You
We
did come?
definitely did. Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
I stayed with my mom a couple of years. Then I ended up opening a new restaurant in Scotch Plains, and I met
Mm-hmm.
Hannah's dad. We got together. He was ready to leave Jersey. I was ready to leave Jersey. I have to tell you, in that time frame, I was kind of scared to leave Jersey. There was always this underlying thing inside me with my mom that I felt like I wouldn't have her long.
Mm-hmm.
I'd wake up and have dreams about it, of her not being here well before she died. And I mean, I remember one time where I woke up and I had this dream and I was visiting my dad and I was sobbing because she had died in my dream. I picked up the phone and I called her and I was like, Mom, it was like 2 a.m. She's like, what is going on? And I'm like, I had a dream that you died and I needed to make sure you were okay. She's like, I'm okay. Everything's fine. Go back to sleep. You're good. I'm like, okay. So whenever I had a nightmare, I would call her and she would
Yeah.
put up with me. It was always there. I can't explain it. It's the knowing thing. She even knew it.
Yeah.
She thought wouldn't be here after 40. So she also knew she wasn't going to be here long. I guess you're born with that type of thing. And so I was kind of scared leaving New Jersey because I didn't want to, I didn't want anything to happen to her and to be my fault because I didn't stay. She needed me in a very codependent way. So I ended up leaving with him. So this would have been about 97, maybe. So where were you in
Mm-hmm.
97?
Still same thing. Law school is 4 years.
4 years. Okay. So
So
you're just a
I'm
little
halfway
bookworm.
through. Yeah,
You're
halfway
halfway
through.
through. So I went there, and this is where I discovered email. And so email started to come into play because, we're old school here. There was pen and paper. There was no text messages. It was beepers, I think, when I was a server. And then, so I went to Texas. I was there, and this is where I started to kind of learn the office stuff and be a part of that. I stayed there, and my mom would come to visit in the new apartment and stuff like that. And then one day, Austin was 5. So he was playing baseball, but it was T-ball. And he had hit a grand slam home run. I had talked to my mom. She called me. And I was telling her all about it. And she's like, okay, do you want me to call your stepdad, Jeff, to tell him about it? Because he's going to be so excited. And I was like, no, I'll call him. She's like, okay. So, said, I love you, hung up the phone. And then I lay down to take a nap. My mom's birthday's coming up. So I knew I have to go to the mall to buy her a present. That was so I need to go take a nap. So I went and took a nap. And then the phone starts to ring off the hook and off the hook and off the hook. It's constant. And I'm like, why? Who is calling me? It was answering machines. And I hear my stepdad on there going, Christy, you need to pick up. It's an emergency. Love you, miss you, bye.
LUMUB podcast.
Love You, Miss You, Bye has been brought to you by Christy Chanel, LLC. But if you're looking for more information or want to follow us on social media, go check out ChristyChanel.com. All the podcasts are streamed there and the YouTube episodes are there. So why not? You can also listen where all podcasts are streamed. This includes Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And lastly, thank you to you, the one that's listening or watching. I appreciate you so much. Love you, miss you, bye.